All right, welcome back to the next section that we're going to get into as it relates to the management framework. And this one is pretty quick as well. This one gives you actually a solid foundation of understanding how this management framework is based and what it's really based on. And it's based on a lot of principles from Agile. So these ones, it's not going to be very long. I will go through this, but it's important for you to know because these are really good things for you to intersperse as you're having discussions with your management team, your managers, your leaders around how you're managing your team differently and ultimately what the success or the root of the success that you're ultimately going to have as it relates to this new management framework. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. Boom. Hopefully you can see me and hopefully my face isn't totally in the way. And it's easy for you to kind of get a sense of how this is all going to come together. So what you're seeing on the screen here is the Agile Manifesto. And this is an abbreviated version of it. The 4 points that you need to know about the Agile Manifesto are people over process, evidence over opinion, customer centric versus brand centric, and responding to change versus following a plan. Those are adapted versions of the original manifesto, but that's more or less what it is. And the idea here for you to understand is this is how we interpret this the Agile Manifesto in the sense that we value having focus on people, which is where the whole master blueprint comes from, as opposed to just overarching process. And really your management framework is going to be a manifestation of that. You're going to have process, but it's going to be focused around the people. We also want to have evidence to this process, which we'll talk about later in the measurement section of this overview or of this section. But it's important for you to base your decisions on evidence as opposed to just your opinion, because that's a recipe for disaster as it comes to management. This next one, customer centric over brand centric, is really focused on the end user or the end consumer. So this doesn't necessarily mean you have customers paying at the end of your trough. This means that the people that are consuming your work, you're focused on what they need as opposed to what your needs are as a team, because you're ultimately serving the people at the end that are consuming your work. And then finally, responding to a change versus following a plan. This is good for everyday life because change is going to happen constantly. It happens all the time, and plans are often thrown awry just because that's how the world works. All right. Here's a little bit of a braggadocious slide for how we are better with Agile as opposed to doing traditional sort of management. And this is really like, you can think that this is through the lens of just software development, but it's really not. It's for any type of project. If you think about how we have been sort of, at least in the Western culture in the United States, we have been geared towards what is a traditional sort of approach to thinking. You define the requirements, and let me get my little laser pen so you can follow along with me. You define the requirements, then you come up with your concept or your design or your plan. Then you go and actually do the plan, and then usually you test, but more often than not, you just skip this step and then you go to deploying or finishing and sending it out. This is the same for software development as it is for writing a paper in college, as it is for planning a project, as it is for any other way that we have approached things. And it's kind of difficult to break this traditional mindset of just starting with the requirements, defining what it is the design, and developing over a phase, testing over a phase, and deploying over a phase. And more times than not, I'm sure you all have been aware that when this happens, this usually around the deployment or when things are due phase is when things start to go amiss. This is when problems happen time and time again, because everything is green, or in my case, I'm green red colorblind. Everything is blue until all the way across this line. We got through development, got through testing. Everything is blue, great, great, great. And then when it's time to go to deploying, that's huge. Like, oh my gosh, we're so behind, and this isn't going to happen because we're miserably behind, and we should have known about this earlier, or months ago, but we've really just been kidding ourselves. The better way of doing this is flipping the traditional or traditional project management methodology on its head. And I'll talk later about the iron triangle and the relationship this plays. But basically, you're going to try to do snippets of all of these things at once. Snippets of all of these things at once. So you're going to try to do really, really minute and small requirements, really, really small ways of design, developing, and testing, and then deploying or releasing things out to the end users so that you can fail faster. Ever heard of failing faster as a good thing? Well, this is the manifestation of that. We want to be able to do all of these things at once, define the requirements, define how we're going to approach it, actually approach it, send it out for review and feedback, and then learn whether or not we hit the mark or not. And it's really important in this approach because you are able to iteratively go through and make sure your plan is better and better and better over time. As we think about this as managers, this is a really interesting way for you to be able to gauge the success of your employees' work. Instead of looking at things in phases, look at things in delivery of value or delivery of the outcome. That's what we want to have, is outcome-based delivery. It has nothing to do with phases getting checked off and feeling good about ourselves. It's actually getting outcome and getting delivery so that we can provide feedback to our line reports, or or we can obtain feedback from the end consumers of our work, and that way you can dial in and sharpen what it is that you're working on time and time and time again. You're not sort of restricted to not delivering anything until you deploy, and then on the top timeline, when ultimately you were way off the mark or you misunderstood the requirements from the jump. That is the advantage of doing things the way that we're going to be doing them, because you're going to iteratively deliver things and you're going to do it so fast that people will likely not even be able to keep up with you, which is a good and bad thing, but we'll figure that out later when we talk about executing in here. Okay, the last little braggadocious thing that we'll go through in this little middle section is that agile projects are just better. Full stop. There's tons of evidence, there's tons of information, there's tons of surveys. If you don't know that agile projects are better, then you are living under a rock. And for those of you that are challenging this or saying, that's bullshit, it's agile done correctly, or agile that's done at a high fidelity. I'm not saying that you have to have a scrum master, or you have to have these certain agile tenets, but there are ways of doing agile well, and there are ways of doing agile poorly. And what we're going to focus on is all that I know on how to do agile well, so that you can get the advantages of switching from a traditional approach to management and using an agile approach to management. This is not just project, this is also management. This is how you're going to manage your team moving forward. This is their employee development. This is the projects that you're working on. These are the requests. These are the other things, the flow of work through your team. We can do this in a lean, agile way, and you're going to be able to crush it. You're going to do great at it. And that's it for the Agile Braggadocio section. We'll come up with module 3 right after this, and we'll get further into this module.